Hello, I'm Thomas Carruthers, and this year marked. This is the. I'm going to ruin this now. Hello, hello, Alex. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. And yourself?
I'm very good. This is wonderful. This is the wonderful Alex Reeve. Now, Alex doesn't know this. We record way in advance, so this will be coming out in a couple of months, actually. And so I
Whoa.
was going to start talking about how currently there is a re-release of Stop Making Sense, but that won't be currently anymore. Have you managed to see it? Have you managed to see the re-release?
Yeah, I managed to go down to because I'm based in Leeds,
Yeah.
the Hyde Park Picture House, which is like a really nice oil lit
Mm.
cinema, which is I hadn't been there before because it's been closed for like the last couple of years for
Yeah.
renovation, and managed to get down there for the first time and Stop Making Sense was the first thing I saw,
Very good.
and it was really good because everyone was dancing up the back,
Mm.
so got involved with that as well. So that was the perfect way to see it, really. I
This
think.
is our first non. I'll just say non-fiction. This is our first non-fiction film, and I've been circling it for a while. Um, and well, to be honest, Alex, there is nobody else in the world I would rather, or rather can, talk about Stop Making Sense than your fine self. We worked in a bar together for how many months? Not. I think it's shorter than we actually thought it was
It, it
because
that makes it sound bad though, because it makes it sound like it felt longer than it actually was, you know.
no, in a good
But
way.
that's probably a good thing. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Um,
It probably was about 6 months. I feel like, yeah,
Something about that time, and on a Sunday shift, it was very, very quiet. And it was a great joy when I read my schedule. I thought, oh, it's just me and Alex. That's wonderful. And frequently we would set musical, themes for ourselves more than I remember.
yeah,
Once we did,
definitely no one else.
definitely nobody else. We did one day we did Beatles versus Stones, but then halfway through realized that we're both much bigger fans of the Beatles than we are the Stones, and that just became then um, just Beatles night.
Yeah,
But just a constant, a go-to, an unbeatable is the Stop Making Sense live album. And I hadn't up until that point, that's a lie. And if she's listening, she'll be angry. Up until that point, I'd met one person who I shared a love of Stop Making Sense. I'd met people who liked Talking Heads, but not specifically um, the world of Stop Making Sense. And that's only grown because paired with this big 40th anniversary, my Bruford, the college, they did all of my friends, their last play infused a lot of Talking Heads music. So I did feel a little bit like an old man in the sense of my good friend Rian, who only now was like, oh yeah, have you ever heard of Girlfriend is Better? I was like, yeah.
yeah.
I have many, many times. And so I did
I
have
listen
that
to
sort
it
of
religiously on every Sunday.
so there was that a lot of talking heads in my life current, largely fueled again by this huge 4K large restoration of the original film. Now, I was trying to think about this, and I had a sort of inkling beyond the osmosis of. I remember seeing Psycho Killer in a Simpsons episode where it was a Treehouse of Horror, and Homer started killing celebrities, and I was like, this is a great song. And I think that's where I started. And then after that, I remember watching Risky Business as a kid, and Risky Business has a scene with Swamp. And I was like, this is a great song. And there was that great moment of they're both by the same person. This must be a great band. And then that snowballed and snowballed. Do you remember your sort of origin story with the great band Talking Heads?
I think I remember watching the Once in a Lifetime video when I was a
Mm.
kid. I think it was on like because my sister used to watch what's that thing called? It's like Cribs, MTV Cribs.
Yeah.
And I remember just like flicking through the channels after that and seeing like David Byrne sort of like appearing
Mm.
as he does in that video and like walking across the screen in a really
Mm.
funny way. Um, and I think that was the first time I'd sort of like come across Talking Heads. And then, yeah, after that, I think I'd sort of stumbled across them on YouTube once.
Yeah.
It was like a video of them doing Psycho Killer and Tina Weymouth just sort of looking very like sternly while playing the bass. And yeah,
It's
enjoyed that. And then
it,
did the same.
it's funny you've brought up the rather immediately music videos, because 1984 is a huge crossroads, because you get almost back to back, perhaps the creation of the greatest concert film in Stop Making Sense. I mean, you've got the Pantheon, you've got Last Waltz, you've got Woodstock or whatever, but you've got that, and then they talk about it on the commentary how when it comes to budgeting, they would much rather put the money that it would take to make a concert film into three huge videos that are going to play on MTV. Obviously, 84, I think, is it 84 MTV or is it? I think I've got that right, but I might be wrong.
All right.
Either way, it's mid 80s, huge boom. And well, Thriller is 84. That's what I'm thinking. Thriller
Yeah,
is
that's the one I was
84.
thinking as well. Because
And from that, you're never going to go back. And Michael Jackson doesn't make a concert film until he's dead. So, and it's weird that we're talking about it now, because the same week of the American re-release of Stop Making Sense, we get Taylor Swift The Eras Tour, which is one of the biggest selling movies of the year. And recently, I haven't watched the Taylor Swift one, but I did watch Beyonce's Renaissance film, which is excellent and very, very good. And it's sort of, we had a mini boom with it was Hannah Montana 3D and Justin Bieber 3D and One Direction, and that sort of boom of these concerts are overselling. Let's make a movie and release that. And so that was a kind of mini boom of concerts again. But there is Stop Making Sense marks a sort of cliff's edge before concert films sort of disappear for a while, in the most popular sense.
yeah,
And I don't think it's down entirely to the fact that this is so totemic and perfect, but it does kind of feel like
you can't really
this.
get much better.
You can't. It's the perfect confluence of music, visuals. Well, this is where it comes. I mean, it's like somebody was trying to make a film just for me, because it's not that I just love Talking Heads. It's that Jonathan Demme is one of my favorite filmmakers. Anyhow, Silence of the Lambs is my second favorite film of all time. It's probably my first. I watched it twice for different reasons within 2 months. I was like, I think it's probably number one now. And so that incredible confluence, and I think it's what separates, I mean, two modern examples, it's what separates Renaissance from what I've heard about Taylor Swift in the Eras Tour is a very shoot the stage. That's it.
About it, yeah.
Have you watched any of these recently? What is your concert film vocabulary beyond Stop Making Sense?
So I hadn't really thought about this film. Well, I don't know whether you call it a film. I guess it probably is. When I was like 11 or 12, just getting into playing guitar, I was really into AC/DC, and they did a live recording kind of film of them playing at Donington.
Yeah.
And I don't think that really counts as like a concert film, because it's not really like, I don't know, it's not really arty in a sense. It's just like them rocking out, getting all the involved,
I know
and
it's a concert film in the literal sense,
yeah, yeah,
and just because you've got this directed by Jonathan Demme, one of the great filmmakers, and The Last Waltz directed by none other than Martin Scorsese, we sort of get and the incredible visual flair of Prince's Sign of the Times. We look at those best of the best ofs, and we kind of add an unrealistic expectation onto the the genre as a whole, which is for the most part just shoot the stage and chronicle this incredible event, which
mm,
I'm not against at all. Maybe this is an unpopular opinion. I feel the same way with theatre, in that I'm quite happy. I know you're not
same.
really a musical person, but like I'm very happy with NT Lives and stuff. I'm very happy with this stuff being chronicled forever.
Yeah, I mean, that AC/DC thing was like the thing that actually pushed me to learn guitar because I'd
Mm.
seen how literal it was and how like how much people enjoyed watching it and how much I enjoyed watching it because it was just there, you know.
Yeah, I have no
um,
doubt beyond the, the hits that will remain hits forever, like Once in a Lifetime and Psycho Killer, the fan base and the adoration of Stop Making Sense, sorry, of Talking Heads is in large part down to the major successes creatively and financially of Stop Making Sense.
yeah, I agree with that.
Do you remember watching Stop Making Sense? Because I don't really have a particular I don't have a particular pinpoint there. I just remember sort of getting into Talking Heads, and then it was completely free on YouTube, the full thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think I remember watching it during the first lockdown. I think it was.
Mm,
Um, really enjoyed it, and then
yeah,
obviously because it was on YouTube and it was free, I think I watched it maybe 3 times
yeah. It's
just during
just
that first lockdown. Like,
it's just perfect. It flows. There's no bad song or bad bit really. It's it's rare in that sense, and it's the perfect hangout movie. I mean, when I literally came in and stayed at yours, you put it on. It's the
yeah,
perfect, not necessarily, yeah, I'll say background movie if you've seen it 100
yeah,
times, because it's thoroughly enjoyable in both ways. It's a perfect background movie. It's perfect to watch live as a dance party, as you experienced. And
yeah,
also, just me sat alone on my sofa watching the Blu-ray and just watching it, quote unquote, intently. Actually, no quotes. I was watching it. It was great just sitting there, tapping my toes. It's completely malleable in whichever way you view it. Um, and I think it's been recognised as such. I mean, in 2021, Stop Making Sense was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as a culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant film. I don't know what other concerts and documentaries have been selected, but the National Archive is a very prestigious thing. And when it comes to critical opinion, Pauline Kael, Leonard Maltin, lots of people herald this as the best concert film. And it is always kind of that conversation of, do you prefer Last Waltz or Stop Making Sense? And for me, it comes down to just I happen to be a bigger fan of Talking Heads than the band, um, just their music, and so I'm very happy um, listening to them over and over and over and over again. Um, do you have a context of have you ever shown this to anybody or had it on or played music other than Donna, the wonderful bartender who we worked with who hated who what's this shit? Love Donna, but have you ever had an experience of people just being like, no, really don't like Talking Heads? Because I haven't. I think they're kind of worldly liked. I could be wrong.
yeah. I mean, I don't think I've shown it to someone that I've genuinely thought, oh, they're not going to like this. Like,
Yeah.
I tend to put it on with people that I know who are just going to be like, oh, of course, it's Talking Heads. I feel like they probably already
Mm.
know that already. Um, I feel like even if you showed people who are like not really that into them, they find something within the music or
Oh, yeah.
in what's going on. It's like, oh, it's good. Yeah, there's
Mm.
something
And
there.
also, I mean, it gets. I think it's kind of in sort of Hey Jude territory for us now, probably, and like, but and hearing Once in a Lifetime again and Psycho Killer, it's like, I'm not really a big Twist and Shout fan anymore, but those are evergreen hits, and when it gets to them, I could listen to the live version of Once in a Lifetime all the time. I'm kind of done with the studio version. I know that sounds stupid, but when it's heard so constantly, I don't know.
Mm. I'm the same with Burning Down the House. It's just as
Are
soon as you
you?
guitar at the start, like the live version at least, that really just for some reason hits a lot harder for me than the studio version. I
Yeah.
can't really put a reason why, but
I had an ex, and
yeah,
she was like firmly against live versions. She loved seeing music live,
mm,
but she was like firmly against, like,
yeah,
this does nothing for me. Why are we listening to this version? And Stop Making Sense is one of those things where I don't know how it sounds so crisp.
yeah. I think I read somewhere that this was like the first film that was like really considered for like digital audio
It was.
and
Yeah.
really like, seriously as well. So I guess that probably
That
has
helped.
to it.
Tina
Yeah.
said that they did do some overdubbing, but nowhere near as much as you'd think. And that to me is incredible. I mean, obviously it's not a real tape at the start, and they're playing a bass track in the drum machine from
Mm.
the studio in the back. But it just has that incredible tangibility to it that makes everything sound so good. And visually, I mean, we've not even talked yet about the actual conceit of the thing. David Byrne had this idea of letting people see how a concert comes together. And just, and I've heard another quote where he's talking about how um, you you see a show and everything's there at the start and there's nowhere to go from there. And whereas this has a constantly escalating production value, starts with David Byrne bringing on his tape machine and his acoustic guitar. Then we get to it, and it slowly builds and builds and builds. And just when you think the matte blacks drop and the stage and the lights come on for what's the first? So I think it's Slippery People. Is it where it's full? No, it's found. Well, anyway, around that mark, and I think it's Burning Down the House where everybody's completely on, and we get that first wide shot of the full cast, quote unquote, and the matte black. And just when you think that then there's nowhere for them to go from there, then they start incorporating the projections more rather, and more interesting lights. And
Mm.
they were saying on the commentary how they didn't want a single song to feel like another visually, and they achieved that like over and over and over again, filmically and stagecraft.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I noticed the other day. I mean, I was listening to the record of it,
Mm.
and I sent you the pictures of them. But it's quite like interesting looking at the like sort of the big font asking like
Mm.
questions. So asking like, why do the musicians come out gradually? What will the band do next? Where do all these odd movements come from?
Yeah, and it's got constant aloofness, and it can't be underestimated that we're coming at it from a sort of a very different angle, in the sense of I'm here this morning with my Blu-ray and I listened to the commentary and then I watched all the interviews, and we're now on a 40th anniversary and they all came out with loads of different interviews. Big differences. All the stuff and all the interviews that they're doing for this current re-release, they're all together. And it's a very sad thing in a sense, because obviously Jonathan Demme has since died. John Cronenweth, who shot this, who they all call Geordie on the commentary, and is the father of Jeff Cronenweth, the wonderful cinematographer. He's died, and there is that overwhelming sense of, because they are a famously sort of not controversial band, but prickly relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I guess Talking Heads has kind of died as well, really. Like
yeah.
since obviously.
And there is that thing of them all coming together sort of now, acknowledging that incredible moment that they were all together and everything was great. and well, in some ways, but just in acknowledging what they did together. And there is such a stark difference between that and the commentary that I listened to this morning, where they're all in different rooms and it's all separately recorded tracks. It's like, hello, I'm David Byrne. And he's in a completely different room. And I laugh, and I'm sat alone laughing at a commentary track. But the minute that Genius of Love starts, David Byrne disappears from the commentary track for 10 minutes.
Gone, yeah. He's putting a big suit on, isn't he?
And he's like, he doesn't have anything to say. And
yeah, no comment.
There is. Do you listen to much Tom Tom Club? I mean, there's only really that first album, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a few songs that I've listened to. I can't say I think there's a Mariah Carey song that they've got a sample of Tom Tom.
They sampled Genius of Love, the one. Yeah.
But I can't say I've listened to too much of that, unfortunately.
It's interesting. I like Wordy Rapping Hood. That's a fun track.
Yeah, that's the other one I know. I
think that's the other one everybody knows.
Yeah.
And I don't. Then there's no reason why not to. So this was shot over 4 nights at the Pantages Theatre, which is a sort of traditional theatre. You can see the seats when it finally cuts to the audience. They couldn't do another night because they had to get King and I in next. So like they weren't shooting in a concert hall or anything. And but this is another, I mean, let's touch broad strokes now on this. That incredible decision they practiced once with the lights up on the audience so that they could do different lighting. And they decided no, because they noticed that the audience had a lot less energy. And the decision to not show the audience barely at all until the very final Cross-Eyed and Painless, and there's loads of different quotes that they have on this from different angles. And a lot of the opinion is, especially from Demme, is that he felt like it was cheating. Because you always get that sense of cutting to a large crowd of people having fun, and you're like, oh, yeah, no, look how fun this is. And he felt that was like cheating and telling the audience how to feel. And also, he thought that as years go by, it would lead, well, not to a jealousy, but like it would be the opposite effect, because you'd keep cutting to all these people, and you'd be like, wow, they saw it live. And we're here.
So jealous, yeah.
We're here in a bloody, we're in a cinema. Oh, we're here on your sofa watching the Blu-ray. And he thought, and it's such an incredibly intelligent man, Jonathan Demme, because he's kind of right.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel that way anyway, like without the need for lights.
And so they shot with 7 different cameras, and specifically one night just for wides. And Demme's big thing was he wanted to have as much footage as possible without getting in the way. And he didn't want to affect the energy of the show, affect the quality of the show. And also Chris Frantz talked about this in the sense of that there were already people, because it was such a stagecrafty show, there were already people on the stage with lights and shining lights in their faces, and the roadies walking around and the crew. And so they already had that sensibility of people on the stage who weren't the musicians, doing things, holding technology, holding equipment. So when it came to getting the cameras on there, the wonderful producer Gary Getzman, who was Jonathan Demme's partner, and he said, don't look at the cameras. And it's weird in the sense of who does and who doesn't, because Chris Frantz looks like a nervous schoolboy on like the first day taking a photo with his mum. And he's like, no, look, especially the first shot where he comes on and the camera goes all the way around him, and he's like, don't look at the camera, Chris. And then
look anywhere but.
And then the moment before that, David's just going straight in on the stage right camera, just like, don't bump, don't bump. He's looking straight at them, and he's like breaking all the rules. I think there's just, it's not particularly, an astounding, this sounds stupid, but like, it's not particularly an astoundingly visual film in the sense of like, I don't know, there's no really, in the sense of what we think of showy filmmaking. Like there's not one big wanner or anything like that, or huge zooms or anything like that. It's all kind of not static. It's very kinetic, but it's all kind of just shooting and shooting and shooting. Um, oh, I forgot what I was going to say. I was going on a point. I was going to say, but that's it. Overall, it does give this incredible kineticism and the editing, and it all blends together so smoothly and so effectively. Um, it's just all these little choices along the way that make it the quote unquote best concert film ever. Um, yeah, here we are. So David walks on. Let's just go from the start and go from there. David walks on, David Byrne walks on with his tape record player, hey, I've got a tape I want to play you. And he puts it down, and then he starts just acoustically with Psycho Killer. And he was talking on the interview about how by this time he was tired of Psycho Killer, and it's kind of started selfishly as an idea to make Psycho Killer fresh for him again, performance-wise. And I mean, it's an ingenious idea. How do you feel about the fact that for such a famous bass line, this doesn't actually have Tina on?
I sort of understand, being a musician as well. I do sort of understand his point, and I imagine like playing it night after night when you're touring, it must really grate on you, especially when it's like probably your most famous song.
Yeah.
I feel like he probably is well within his right to mess around with it. I imagine probably didn't help things if they're already having a bit of a prickly sort of relationship anyway. Yeah, he was probably adding fuel to the fire, if anything.
It's a great choice because I mean it is at that time their biggest hit, and probably always will be their biggest hit. And it was their first hit, and it has that overwhelming sense of because Jerry Harrison talks when he comes on for Found a Job, and he comments on the commentary of like, oh, this is what it was like when it was the four of us, because sneakily they're not just showing the development of a stage show, they're also showing in many ways the development of the band, because whichever way you look at it, it wasn't a thing where him and Tina were working together and then Chris came on. That bit's a bit more fluid, but from those acoustic guitars and work and playing punk together in CBGBs to the big stagecraft of where they got with the work and go from there. It also wonderfully shows that side of things, which is another just sort of element that is slipped in to make it that bit more interesting as it goes. And I mean, again, people have done that since in many different ways. Again, bring up Taylor, we can't ignore it. The whole point of that tour is the different eras of her career, and in that Beatles, sense. But Talking Heads were never necessarily a band that reinvented themselves. They were constantly experimenting musically, but they were always the sort of art school for sort of quote unquote weirdos, let's just say it, but they were constantly experimenting musically. And obviously the peak of that was their work with Eno, which obviously then alienated the others. And I know this is a big thing with you. I know. Would you say Remain in Light is your favorite album ever? Or I mean, it's definitely up there.
It's definitely up there. That was another one that I listened to a lot during the lockdown. So I think that sort of cemented it as like pride of place as one of my favorite. Did get it on vinyl pretty swiftly after that. So I feel like if I buy something on vinyl, that probably goes far to say that it's up there with my favorite albums. So
yeah,
it's definitely my favorite of theirs. So I have to say that.
I just bought the Stop Making Sense vinyl. They did, but it's not an original because they did. It was, but it's red colored. It was HMV. They did or FOP, whatever it's called now. Give us free advertising. I love your Blu-rays. I buy your Blu-rays all the time. And I was like, am I going to buy it? Yeah, I'm going to buy this. red cut. It's lovely. It's lovely, but it's all out of order.
Yeah, I
It's
just noticed
very
that on
annoying.
I listened to the other day.
Yeah.
It was a bit jumpy, and I was like, this isn't the Stop Making Sense I know.
This is the thing, isn't it? That is the album that people listened to for years, and
Mm.
people didn't have ready access to the film, whereas and it was that thing. Whereas now there is no other version that I listen to other than when I'm
Yeah,
on my phone or whatever, or the film itself. That progression is so cemented and
involved. Yeah.
solidified, and the whole point, and then to play with that, to move all that
Yeah.
around.
It just doesn't feel right, but at the same time, it still has like that energy that you
Oh
expect
yeah,
from it. But yeah, it does leave you feeling a bit like lost. Like,
yeah,
oh, I know what's coming next, and then you're like, hang on,
yeah. Right.
why
Slow
just
down.
why just 1 second? Like,
Yeah. That. So then we get there are a few famous Byrnisms, shall we call it? In Psycho Killer particularly, it's the staggering dance that Tina Weymouth suggests is a version of something Fred Astaire did in a film called Hats Off to Haiti. No, sorry, a song called Hats Off to Haiti. The film is called Royal Wedding. And and again, in the commentary later on, where he's chopping down his arm, he talks very specifically about a random street artist that he saw, and he started filming them because he thought, what a wonderful little, and he talks everything in that monochrome. What a wonderful little idea! And I thought that could be a dance, and I thought we could put that in our film, and
so he did.
and so he did. Um, And Jerry Harrison is also very quick to comment, especially with the crew wearing all black, the elements of kabuki Japanese theater. And it is that completely bizarre confluence of ideas where you get the CBGB's musical influence, the influence of a bit of disco, the rebellious punk against disco element, the international element musically, the the influence of Japanese kabuki theater, and later with some of the costuming's no theater, and it is that incredibly bizarre confluence of ideas that somehow all works and becomes instantaneously iconic. I mean, I think even if you have the barest of knowledge on Talking Heads, that the image of him in the big suit is one of the most iconic images in all of music.
Yeah, I think if I did a fancy dress, I would like go to a fancy dress party. I would dress in a huge suit and say I was David Byrne.
But
Has to be done, I
they'd
think.
be so warm.
Yeah.
This is the thing that people forget about fancy dress. You've got to think, I'm a dancer. And I did American Psycho once because it was Halloween, and I got given uh, a book character or something. There was some weird rule that we did anyway. I had to do a book character. And so I was wearing a full suit and a raincoat. I was sweating like a pig. It was
Mm.
absolutely atrocious. Um, which is also the thing of like watching this in full high definition now. The absolute sweat pouring off them. And I'm not surprised. They're dancing like I've got a quote from David here when he's doing you could watch this video less as a film and instead as an aerobics video.
Yeah,
If
it's
you
just
just
life during wartime.
yeah,
It's
if you
funny.
just do what I do, how I do it, by the end, you'll be in pretty good shape. It's
And yeah,
true.
I have done that before. Tried to keep up with him, and yeah, and that I mean that was once I'd sort of had a skinful of alcohol, so I think I was just running off of those fumes rather than my own like actual athletic ability.
Yeah.
But
It's
good,
I mean
yeah.
we'll get to it after the break, but I just don't think there is a more euphoric 10 minutes. I think it's probably, if I was to rank five scenes, my favorite movie scenes of all time, it's at least in the top 25. I mean, I just think there is nothing more absolutely euphoric. And my mum, she still calls it the one where they're all running, but she loves it. And it is just it's what's the quote here? I've got it here. He's talking about deciding to do the big suit. We're jumping around a little bit, but that's fine. And he says, I wanted my head to appear smaller, and the easiest way to do that was to make my body bigger, because music is very physical, and often the body understands it before the head. Now, if that doesn't read like a mission statement for this entire film, I don't know what does. And it's like you're saying, I can't imagine. I mean, I can't imagine sitting down and watching this. I just did. But if I was I mean, when they re-released it, they held um, standing screenings, which isn't a thing that you normally do. But who wouldn't want the chance to watch this, at a quote unquote standing screening? When they screened it for the first time, they were sat with the great film director Bernardo Bertolucci, and he said, "This is all I've ever wanted: people dancing in front of my films." And then I'm thinking, and then in my head, I went through his films, and I was like,
Really?
yeah, which one? The one where Marlon Brando's crying next to his dead wife? The one about the last emperor? The one about a child emperor in feudal Japan? Or maybe The Dreamers, a movie about, three young incestuous people having a good time. Who's dancing to your movies, Bernardo? It's not, there's no real plausibility there. Uh, we're gonna take our first break, and then we'll be back to continue going through the film and talking firstly about the beautiful rendition of Heaven. And we're back for our second part now on Stop Making Sense. We left off around Heaven. One of the most, and this is where we kind of get into the territory where I think a lot of these recordings, whether they're better or not, I certainly prefer, and I listen to this recording 95% of the time with a 5% re-listen to the original Heaven to be like, what does it actually listen to? Because I've forgotten, because this is such a tantamount, incredible version that, yeah. And are you the same?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is the first time I'd actually heard the song
Yeah.
before anyway. So I think it would be, yeah, I still don't believe I'm really too familiar with what it actually sounds like.
You don't need to. Well, Tina refers to what she's wearing as the blimp suit when she first walks on. She thinks she looks like a blimp. And I think she needs to be nicer to herself. Now, there's a lot of talk about the costuming. And by design, David's very, very particular about all the design elements. And he wanted everybody to wearing mute colours, greys, whites, blacks. Unfortunately, Chris's was in the laundry, and so he just walks on wearing what can only be described as a dad polo, and it makes me laugh every single time.
He is just sort of the dad of the band, really, I think.
Like, hi guys. I was like, hi,
Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah. Just keeping things rolling. Like.
Yeah. It's very nice and refreshing that they're still married and happy.
Hmm. I mean, yeah, obviously.
No, I know, but it's just like, there's no Lindsay Stevie thing here. We can just all be happy.
Yeah.
So Lynn Mabry, one of the two singers are Lynn Mabry and Holt. Lynn Mabry's singing from the wings. She offers the background vocals. And Demme's biggest regret with the film is never getting a good shot of Lynn Mabry singing from the wings, but because he thinks it should have been documented. But on the other hand, he is then toying with if that breaks the conceit of the film and only seeing the stage and whether or not it would be a stylistic departure. And I can see both sides. And I'm also stupid. For a long time, I did think as a kid it was just Tina singing.
I think that's always like been a bit of a. Whenever I've watched Heaven being like watching stuff make sense, like I think I've always thought like who is that singing? Like, why are they on the stage? Like
it's quite ethereal. It's quite like and because the song is so beautiful and lyrically about heaven and stuff like that, it does add something in this case.
Could be an angel. Who
Could
knows?
be yeah. And whereas if it was just cut to, I mean,
Yeah,
Demi would never have shot something so boringly or whatever. But if it just cut to her in the wings, I don't know if it would have the same reaction. So yeah, Chris comes on and we start on dun, 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 dun. Thank you for sending me an angel. Great song. And it's I listen to that a lot. I mean, there is something just about, like we keep saying, that slow build up of everybody coming on, and everybody just is having a lovely time, and it feels real. Now it could be performative, but it never does. Nothing about their interactions in something that is so incredibly stylized and so incredibly performative a lot of the time on behalf of Byrne. Everybody else, and whenever Byrne involves himself with everybody else, feels completely genuine and the exact opposite of performative or stylistic. And whether that is the ultimate performance, I don't think it is. And especially over the fact that it was shot over 5 nights, it just feels like Demi in the footage was like, "Oh, that's a really nice moment there with Jerry and the girls. Let's put that in." And Jerry getting the steps wrong and that sort of thing, and it feels natural. Um, Again, it's that magic trick that is able to be pulled off.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, I think yeah, even when it comes to like the "Thank You for Sending Me an Angel" song, like as soon as Chris Frantz steps on stage, like you've just had like the ethereal side of like heaven being
mm,
like all like luscious and really beautiful to listen to,
mm,
and then suddenly like the energy picks up again and it's like gets it moving and it's like
yeah.
we've got a gig to play here sort of thing.
Oh yeah, and then that straight into Found a Job. Jerry walks on, and that ends in that like minute-long riff, unbroken take from stage right camera, just unbroken, just on the three of them jamming, and the pace never ever lets up, and even the way that I mean, Swamp is dirgier and slower, and obviously this must be the place is beautiful and slower. But for the most part, from this point on, it really doesn't let up. Um, there was an intermission when they did it on actual stage after, I think it's Afterlife. Yeah, Afterlife during wartime, they had a real transition. So it's actually ADR when he says, "Does anybody have any questions?" Because he would say, "We got 10 minutes, see you later." See you. He wouldn't say see you. He said, "We'll see you in a minute."
Mm.
And they were like that. Well, you can't say that because everything Demi's talking about is continuing the pace, building the pace, building the pace. Found a job. Then again, there's always something new and exciting. Then Steve Scales enters with his bongos, and Lynn Mabry and Edna Hall, and you've got that thing that, for as much as Talking Heads is that foursome, because of this film, for me, there is always that visual sense of Talking Heads being this band of eight, like um, nine, sorry, nine. They feel as much of a part of the band as anything else. And this came about from, I guess it happens in sort of every band's career, when musically and album wise, it gets to a point where the music gets harder and harder to play live. Like, it happened with Arctics, it happened with Beatles, and it happened here. When they were recording Remain in Light, they were doing so much overdubbing and so much studio work that they realized very quickly this is an album that will be impossible for the four of us to play. And so Jerry Harrison had the job of recruiting a touring band, but it doesn't feel that way. They feel like they've known each other for years and they're all part of it. Nobody feels on the periphery. Obviously, David's the front man, but nobody feels on the periphery. Demi doesn't make in the filmmaking anybody feel on the periphery. Everybody gets their moments. And even when they're not soloing, it's cutting around constantly. And for as much as David is the front man and is often and he's always singing, and so the camera's always on him, beyond that, there's no favoritism beyond David, which I think is a very good choice.
Yeah, no, I've got to agree with that. I think yeah, it's not centered around anyone in particular, which
Mm.
is good from a from like if you're in a band, you don't really want to be left out. So I imagine that's probably quite satisfying for the people who weren't original Talking Heads, I guess.
And it just gives it that really cohesive feel. Slippery People. I mean, yeah, the minute that Lynn Mabry and Edna Hall come on, the first song that they do is Slippery People, which incorporates call and response. And it's immediately bringing them into the band, quote unquote, into the band and incorporating them a lot more than, your typical, 6 feet from stardom backing singers normally get.
Hmm.
Which again is exciting. And that stomping in unison, and again, immediately bringing them into, and again, they're not in the back, they're not background singers, they're additional singers. They're on the same line, they're only a couple of meters to the right. Everybody is on the same line and they're all doing the same choreography, and David joins in, and it has that wonderful kineticism that we're talking about. And speaking of visually, they were constantly thinking about that visual sense. And I think beyond the stagecraft, there was that feeling of them understanding the importance of the film as well, because Lynn Mabry got this wonderful bob cut, and she came in, and they all said, "Oh, that's wonderful. You look great." And then they realized how wonderful and kinetic both her and Edna's weaves looked on the camera when it was moving, and they were like, "Oh, would you mind getting a weave?" And so she got a weave for these filmings, and it's true, isn't it? That beautiful swaying kineticism. Every single part is in aim of making the film as visual as possible, in a medium that is inherently auditory. Which is, yeah, well, I mean, I'm bad-mouthing a film I haven't actually seen, but according to much critical opinion, on recent tour films and, other lesser tour films, that much focus and that much effort isn't put in. And, get 10 cameras and we'll sort it out later. But it's not like they didn't have 7 here.
Or 3 or 4 nights.
Yeah, 3 or 4 nights at the Pantages Theatre. And then just when you think that's the whole band, Bernie comes on, Alex Weir comes on the guitar, and you have even more, and everybody is so visual and emotive. Bernie Worrell, I mean, when he's teasing, it's like he's teasing us at the start of Once in a Lifetime. He's like, and it's such an emotive face, and Demme talks about these incredibly emotive faces and having the great joy of being able to capture them all. Do you have a favorite member of the Stop Making Sense film additions to the team?
I think, yeah, Bernie Worrell's got to be my favorite. He just looks like he's having a great time. I mean, they all do, but like, I can't get over how excited he is through the whole thing.
The only time I've seen something so similar was, did you watch all of Get Back, or did you?
I think I only saw like the first half of it, I think.
They get Billy Preston in later to do keys, and he's just having the time of his life. And I imagine it is that sort of sensibility of, I'm playing with one of the great bands currently working. This is incredible. And they appreciate me for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And
I'm adding something to this. Like
I'm adding to something that a month ago, listening to the record, I thought was unaddable.
Mm.
And yeah, no, it's incredible. And we get to Who's Got a Match, and we get Burning Down the House, which you're sort of you're done with. But it is that euphoric moment of the first absolute wide shot of the full musicians on the stage and the full black mat set and the full lighting. And Jerry's joining in with the girls and the absolute sweat by this stage. And you get that absolute just euphoria of seeing what at this time we think is the complete picture.
Yeah.
And again, one of their biggest hits at the time. So you sort of that pairs well. David would not allow paper water cups or anything white or anything onto the stage, and because it would ruin the visual sense. And this is his own quote: "I was turning into a little dictator at the time." At least you've admitted it, David. And then we get Life During Wartime, which we've already alluded to. But there's it's just absolute euphoria. And I keep saying the same thing, but it's true. I don't know how else to describe it.
I heard somewhere that, do you know the part on this during this song where David runs around the stage?
Yeah.
I don't know if someone was really just taking the mickey out of me or not, but someone told me that he was running away from a wasp. I don't know how true that is.
I didn't hear any of that in my research, but it does make it incredibly more entertaining.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Uh,
It would be great if that was the case.
that would be great. And then yeah, this is
Perfect
where
caption. Yeah.
yeah, one of those famous. It's like when people say that Singing in the Rain was shot with milk because it was
Mm.
showed up better on screen, and obviously that's not true at all. Imagine the milk. Do people not hear that and go, what? Instead, they go,
Yeah.
oh, wow, they used milk? It's like,
Yeah.
no.
It's mental. Yeah.
Think of the milk that would be going down that street and all the milk. That would be the most disgusting film ever made.
It just, oh, it stink after a while, wouldn't it?
But of course, it is ironic because then Clockwork Orange, they use Singing in the Rain and he loves milk. So it's it's a full circle. They come back and we immediately get the projections of the words that David describes as words that he finds funny when you say them by themselves. And this is where we get into territory that I just can't put my finger on why it doesn't annoy me, because it's filled with ideas that are like, on a surface level, quite pretentious, quite, what's the point of this? Oh, house, microwave. It is, I don't, okay. Yeah, really interesting. But for some reason, it just doesn't turn me off at all. And I don't, and there is something about the sort of quote unquote goofiness of David and the fact that they're just owning it, the fact that it's just these ideas he's had. I don't know why it doesn't annoy me more, but it doesn't annoy me at all. And I don't know how you feel about the projections or some of the other elements as the film continues from this point onwards.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it really detracts away from like the energy they've already created. Like,
Oh yeah.
like break what's already there, I guess. It's already at like such a high amount already.
And this is where we get a few different elements where the fact that it was shot over 4 nights and the fact that you've just lost the intermission starts entering us into this weird sort of space, because we've just seen him sweating like a mad pig, and then we cut to black and then he's completely pristine. And again, it adds a weird sort of liminal element and a bizarrity to it that's so wonderfully enthralling. I'm like, oh, he's magic. Yeah. And then, and even in the next one, when he's got the slicked back hair for making Flippy Floppy and Swamp, and then lights come down on Swamp, and then the lights are up, and it's different hair, and you go, and it's just the most. I mean, it's just continuity errors, to be honest, but it adds something again. And maybe I've drank the Kool-Aid. Maybe I'm just completely talking heads pilled, but
Yeah.
but for me again, every little thing adds something to it. From this back half, do you have a particular favorite song, particular favorite number, Alex, or what
I
jumps
think
out?
Girlfriend is Better is really good, but during our little break, I was sort of running through them just to I don't know, just get an idea of how they all start. Because once I hear a start of a song, I just
Yeah.
remember the whole thing. I don't know why. But yeah, I think Girlfriend is Better. It's got to be up there.
And of course, we get the iconic big suit. First, we get making Flippy Floppy, and when Tina's changed into her new skirt as well. And David actually sees it as a character, and he says that you could see it as a journey. And he says that you could see it as some stiff white guy who learns to shed his inhibitions and get loose. I don't really see that, David. I think you're reaching a little bit there.
He's already pretty loose during.
Yeah, he's
Like, when
immediately
he's jumping
loose.
around. Like,
If anything, he gets loose at Life During Wartime and then says, nah, I'm going to go back to my suit.
Yeah, I'm gonna wear
and
the
then
bigger
gets,
suit now.
and then yeah, maybe it's a bigger suit, and then he gets
Yeah.
loose again. I don't really get that one. However, on the other hand, when Jonathan Demme and his friend and partner Gary Getzman went to see it, they said, "This is a movie. This is a movie," and I can get that sensibility. Um, how many kicks do you think Alex Weir does in this entire film? I didn't count them, but he is just absolutely kicking like a mad rabbit.
Um, it's got to be double figures, like
He's just
maybe even
anytime.
triple figures at this
Yeah,
point.
just give it a kick, and again, Dummy knows that it's a wonderful cutting technique. You know, he can give it a kick, cut to the next thing, and it's just like maybe gave him a 20 before, and it's like, Alex, can you do a few more kicks? Because the minute you
Yeah,
kick, I can cut from something. It's really great for me to kick and a cut. Um,
we just put you on stage, and I'll just film you like
yeah,
kicking, and then we can, yeah.
and then actually, Demi did suggest getting a studio, making it look like the Pantages, and shooting some more close-ups.
Right.
And they said no, because there'd be no energy. It wouldn't work, and it would feel false. And I mean, they pull it off. I don't know what close-ups more they wanted, because they did an astounding job.
Mm.
But maybe some more tricky photography. I don't know. Um, and then we get Swamp with that red light and the eeriness of that track, and just and that dirge-like quality, and then lights down, and then it's the silhouette show and what a day it was, and all these intense close-ups. Everybody's got their own sort of ghost story, lit from the front, and it's just incredibly evocative lighting and photography. And by the time that Burns, that screaming, cackling break near the end of the and it's just absolute energy, um, for two straight hours, which is
Mm.
just boggling.
I think, yeah, I think what a day it was, or what a day that was, might
Mm,
be my favorite like visual of all of them. I think purely because it's got so much like contrast on it.
yeah,
That yeah, I think it's for that element. I don't song wise, I think it's probably not my favorite of that sort of
no, no, no.
second half. But yeah, just for the visual of it, I think it's great. It's really really good to watch.
And then we go into where the visual and the musical meet and make the most beautiful song of all time. Have you
Mm.
decided yet, officially, whether this will be your first dance, or is it still up in the air?
It's definitely on the playlist, I would say.
Is it a race for which one of us gets married first?
Yeah.
Um,
Probably, yeah, at this point.
oh, I mean, is there this? I'm just an animal looking for a home. Share the space for a minute or two. There's just nothing like it, and
Makes with a view, come on, like
it's absolutely
better way to
beautiful.
compliment someone. Like.
Do you know where he came up with the idea of this song?
No, no,
He
not at
saw
all.
a picture of Eskimos, like singing and screaming and shouting into other people's mouths, because that was a way to keep warm. And I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And
It's very David Byrne, isn't it? Like,
yeah, and that is enough to make for him to then make that. Bum, 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 bum. Do love the slight bitchiness of Chris Frantz, because he's on the commentary and he goes, the famous dance with the lamp. And I'm like, why, Chris? Why be so downbeat? Then he goes, it's a good job it worked tonight, the night that they filmed, because sometimes the bulbs would break, and it was a very expensive lamp too. And then again, talking about that, the absolute stylism, the absolute performity, but there is all those little minute moments where the reality creeps through. And Jonathan Demme's on the commentary, and he talks about how, I love this little moment where David looks behind him to look at the projections, because is it working? And it is. I had to do, when I worked for a luxury liner. and we had to do a radio play, and I had to read in front of a huge projection, with big photos and everything. And Liz Taylor. It is an incredibly what's the word? Focused. You've got to focus. Yeah. Um, yeah. What else have I got here? Oh, once in a lifetime again. That sort of teasing, holding on Bernie Worrell. And then again, the glasses and the preacher aesthetic used in the video, where the original lyrics sort of came from that preacher aesthetic. And again, I know I'm boring and I'm saying the same thing, but I just don't know how to just talk about this without describing just absolute pure joy.
I think that it's made me realize that it seems like there is a lot of characters in the second half, really, isn't there? Because I would say probably like the first half is the development of that character becoming more loose.
Yeah.
And then the second half is like David Byrne going through the.
Well, it's always felt to me. It's always felt to me like not because everything was incredibly decided down to a incredibly decision based. But it sort of felt like, did we drop the black too early? Did we drop the black mat set too early? Because now we don't have anywhere to go. And I'm not denying the great projections and the incredible lighting of what a day that was. But it does at times feel like, okay, everybody's on stage now.
Yeah. Who can we invite on? Oh, David Byrne could do some more characters, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. At least he didn't go, I'm about to introduce somebody, preacher I met the other day. And he puts on glasses. That would have been good. I've just met somebody, my lamp.
Yeah.
It's called, at least he doesn't try and do stand-up or something like that. Well, there is a place to go, and that place to go is Genius of Love by the Tom Tom Club, which is a great song, and musically it's great. But the only thing to talk about is Chris Frantz screaming just absolute nonsense phrases. Tina says on the commentary, poor Chris, he's out of breath because he's been doing so much up until this point, and now he's just yelling. Because the original track doesn't have any of this.
No. I realized that as well. I was like, why does he say these things? Like, is he shouting James Brown? Like
James Brown, James Brown, and
why?
the girls can do it too. And it's like, okay, it's fighting for free equal rights. It's like, yeah, Tina's incredible, and she went through a lot in the music industry. But this is the time you want to do it. She's doing a great solo, and you want to just yell, "The girls can do it too." And he doesn't really, on the commentary, I was like, oh, does he say why? No. He just says that when people bump into him on the street and he tells them who he is, the first thing people say a lot of the time is James Brown, James Brown. And he's like, the Godfather of Soul, check him out. I was like, I'm checking out you.
Yeah,
Chris.
I think everyone who likes Talking Heads probably knows who James Brown is, right?
No. People who know James Brown, more people know James Brown than they do Talking Heads. And then I love at the end. All right, that's it for the Tom Talk Club. Nice to be here.
Do you think David Byrne's standing at the side of the stage, like, come on, wrap it up, guys? I want to get back on stage now. Like,
did I show you the Documentary Now parody of this or not? I can't remember.
I don't think so. No.
It's brilliant. Documentary Now is a great show, and every episode they do a different parody. And they did one called Final Transmission, and Fred Armisen plays like a sort of tyrannical David Byrne figure. And he's like, and the way he introduces it is like, this is a song that they're fake Tina. This is a song that Tina wrote, and it's not very good. Enjoy. It's hilarious. And also he talks about one of the songs that Chris wrote, and he's just at the back on the drums having a great time. They're fake Chris, played by Bill Hader. And he's like, yeah, Chris wrote this one. And then the next time he's brought on a full jazz piano. It's very, very good. I think it's on Amazon Prime still. Final Transmission. And then it's nearly it's winding up. Girlfriend is better. We get the famous big suit, and then he takes off the big suit, and we get the Take Me to the River, which was their first big hit. And it's just a great Al Green cover, and Steve Scales does crowd work for not for no reason, but like I'm pretty sure they're hyped enough. Steve, you've been performing for an hour. I think they're in, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Let me hear." I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I think they're excited," and and then we get the band introductions. I always love a band introduction. I I really do, especially in like a big band. I don't know what it is, but like
Yeah. Like
I love it.
it's kind of like of its time, really. I don't think you
Yeah.
really get too much, unless I just go to the wrong gigs and they don't do band introductions because they don't like each other or whatever. But
Well, it's like what's like a four-person band. I kind of know John Paul, George, and Ringo. But there is something about like I went and saw Bruce Springsteen. I was very fortunate, and that great thing of doing the tour of like Steve Van Zandt, how many and going around and just and that
it
wonderful
take like half hour or something.
yeah. It was like well, what took longer was him doing his talking into songs. It was like what do I dream? Live for a dream. I had a dream. Here's a song. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. And probably blew out my new mic, but that's okay. It's a really good impression. Um, and then he puts on a red baseball cap. Not really sure about this character, David. Uh,
Yeah, it's a
also,
bit.
at what point did he regret having to wear that big suit for the rest of the show?
I think it's the funny bit for me is like where he's just wearing the trousers and the
Yeah,
shirt. He just looks ridiculous
it
by then.
looks like
Like
Santa.
yeah, yeah, like yeah, it just looks quite funny to me. They either keep the whole suit or lose it all. Like,
Yeah. He's like, I'm gonna take me to the river, take my jacket, and he holds it out, and somebody has to come on and get it. Um, and then yeah, we finally get those audience shot, and there's the woman who does the head thing, and there's the kid with the unicorn, and then we cut to Jonathan Demme, and I got really sad this time actually, because I mean, Jonathan Demme is now dead, of course, and has been for some time now. But I got quite sad when it cut into him, and he's just rocking along with Jordan Cronenweth, who's also dead, and it's like I don't know if are you a Twin Peaks fan or not,
I've not seen it. I'll admit.
but they did the recent series, and there was like lots of different like uh little references to those who had already died, and then since that has come out, like 5 people who were shooting that at the time have died, and it's all just incredibly. I guess it's like talking about any movie that's from 1940. Obviously, everybody in 12 Angry Men's dead, but there is just something about that liminality,
Mhm.
and and
Past
it
time, I think, isn't it?
and it
So,
goes back to what we were talking about with Demi saying about like feeling jealous of the people stood there watching it in that moment, and it's like you know that the little kid with his unicorn is immortalized forever, and uh, I guess that was. Let's talk about that then. Because it's not the first time that American Utopia came out a few years ago. Again, veterinary, excellent filmmaker Spike Lee comes in, and that had for me a little bit more of shoot the show, but that's because it was a smaller stage, and that was had even more visuals because of that incredible design that they did on Broadway. Um, I think I gave it a high review. I can't remember, but I yeah. What you like? You like American Utopia, don't you?
yes, yeah, I've seen it. I think just the once.
Yeah, I haven't had a rewatch in a while.
But yeah, it's good to watch. I did watch the advert just before
Mm.
this, and it's something like David Byrne saying like, "Oh, we thought what's the most important thing on a stage, and it is the person on the stage. So we got rid of everything else.
Yeah,
So they literally just got rid of
I
all the
mean
stands, instruments, and they just carry them instead, and their
the
shoes.
the
So
big advent, yeah, the big advent of that was that they pioneered portable, like a lot of portable I don't know music, a lot of portable instrumental devices and mics for ease of having how many musicians were in that one? 20 or so?
Yeah, something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but I'll give it a
No.
Google.
And it's just an incredible work. But nothing is going to beat Stop Making Sense. And I also love at the end when they bring all the crew on. When was the last time you saw anybody at a gig bring the crew on? And I know that they're part of this in more ways than other shows. But
I think like sometimes with like a last show of the tour, maybe would
yeah,
it would be like a big sort of, I don't know, appreciation sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's still pretty rare. I would suggest.
It's just great. I don't know. I don't know how to end. I love Stop Making Sense. Any final thoughts, Alex? Any final thoughts?
If you haven't seen it, please do it for your own good, I think. Because you will have a great time, whatever happens. And if you've seen it once, I'd recommend moving the sofa slightly back and dancing up to it because it's great. Like, have a skimful as well. That's another way of really.
I've never heard this before. A skimple.
A skinful.
Like a skinful, right? I have heard that.
Skinful of alcohol.
No, I have heard that. I haven't heard skimple, mainly because it's not a word, and I'm losing my hearing.
Start that up if you like.
Let's have a look. Skimple. Let's see if this is a word. Skimple. There is skimpling in Norfolk.
Maybe that's what it's known as in small areas of Norfolk. Might be.
Oh yeah, you're gonna have a skimple in Skimpling, or what? I've immediately forgotten what that place was called. No, this was wonderful, Alex. It's been on my Excel spreadsheet for a while, but it's finally occurred. And that is, as they say, that's the wonderful Stop Making Sense. Thank you very much, and leave us with a word of wisdom from Talking Heads.
What's the and that was The Passing of Time, I guess, wasn't it, Tom? It's a lyric from that'll do, right?
That'll do. That's